Okay, and welcome to the Recruiter Startup Podcast. I'm joined today by Paul McClatchie, long-suffering recruiter, been in the market for north of 1,000 years. Paul from Engage People. Paul, how are you today?
Great, yeah. Pleasure to join you.
I feel like I've been doing this so long that you were at CPL when I first spoke to you, and that might be close to 10 years ago.
Correct.
The years are passing us by quickly, hey?
Well, I think you at the first recruitment podcast, which I have to say is saying something now, given that there's probably hundreds of thousands of them in different formats. So you're definitely you had a first mover advantage there of some description, Dualta. So great to chat to you.
Yeah, so the first mover advantage on it, it's funny, people copied the exact format I did. Even down to like the same guests, the same the same process. Um, but one of the things that we actually did well from it was we formed Recwire, the community,
Yeah,
and from that we've managed to I don't mind saying it's probably saved our business this year, having recurring revenue and being able to develop a learning and development platform. And now Rec to Rec is starting to come back. I can breathe a sigh of relief, but
fair play.
having those other revenue streams has been a bit of a godsend. But I find it hard to keep the podcast going consistently because sometimes it gets a bit samey on guests.
Hmm.
So I haven't been as active. So when the chance came to interview it, I was excited. And I want to kind of delve into lots of stuff today. I want to talk about the election results of last night. I want to get your view on how that affects the Irish market in a very, very left-leaning media scene. It'll be
Correct. Yeah.
interesting to see the what you actually think will be the outcome for Irish business,
Hmm.
given that the American ecosystem and the Irish ecosystem is so intertwined. Um, David McWilliams says it's almost like we're a state of America at the moment when it comes to our economics, more so than our ties with Britain, which were traditionally quite strong. So keen to kind of jump into that, your journey in recruitment and uh, just some of the unique areas of the Irish economy. I find that the willingness for recruiters to be able to work remotely um, is strong and almost expected compared to every other market that we work. Yeah, just delve into all of that stuff. So let's start by just giving us a bit of a intro into your journey into recruitment and what led you to setting up Engage People.
Yeah, sounds good. And you and I have obviously been speaking over the last 10 years or so. I think I was chatting to you around 2019, and I think we were having a rec to rec chat about one or two people that we were thinking about hiring. And I remember we spoke with the podcast. And to be honest with you, at that point, like Engage People was 3 years up and running. I really like, and I would have been, happy to chat to you. But I think I said to you, look, there's nothing really spectacular I have to tell you. So a pleasure to come on. Whatever it is, 5 years later, basically, we've managed to make some progress since then. So, like you say, I'm a one-trick pony lifer. I've only ever worked in financial recruitment. So when people say they fell into the sector, I graduated. I went on the Reed graduate program now. So I've always been very fond. And Reed's obviously a massive company in the UK, and probably amongst lots of your listeners. Went back and forward to the Cotswolds, had an amazing time. I have to say, it was great crack. Full on drinking sessions, basically for 2 or 3 days at a time. As soon as we left Dublin, basically, and arrived over in the Cotswolds. So it was about there for about 2.5 years, read accountancy. Like lots of people, went to Australia, joined a business called Parker Bridge. And I went from, and I can only speak about the environment
Parker
that I
Bridge.
left.
Who set up Parker Bridge?
So there was the guy I worked with most is Mike Ewart, Kiwi. Another guy called Dave McKillop. They sold it then to, you're going to stretch, this is going to come to me as
Yeah.
soon as we finish now. They sold the business, I'm going to say about 2005. But look, yeah, and actually, when you chat about Walters back in the day, it sort of reminds you of that a little bit. Like it was full on. You had to be at your desk at 8 in the morning. You
Yeah,
didn't, and literally the door was closed. You had to sit at reception if you got in 8:05. So that was a different lifestyle environment to lots of Irish backpackers who were,
yeah,
they're drinking first and working second. But look, I loved it. It was full
yeah,
on. Really like a bear pit in terms of that how deals were done. I remember that one of the first offers that was made was a chunky enough one. I didn't get it done, and there was a load of lads, and every time I walked near a door, they used to say, "Look, let me close the door for you." So it was sort of a school of hard knocks, and
yeah,
learn quickly enough from that point of view. So it was there for about 2.5 years. Absolutely loved it. Would have stuck around, but I'm the youngest of 5 kids, and I just thought, probably just not going to stay here forever. So bit the bullet and came back. Joined CPL, obviously big Irish recruitment company. I'll give you the quick version. So joined as a senior recruiter, just got stuck in basically for 10 years. I always had that sort of employer mindset piece that I ignored sort of noise. There was all sorts of challenges. Like I worked through 08, 09, 2010, promoted to manager director, and then just found myself frequently out and about with. So I recruit finance directors and CFOs, and they'd often say to me, not enough. The conversation turns to business, and these characters, but they'd be always very interested. What's your wicket in terms of is there an equity piece? Is there, what's the structure, an L-tip type piece? And invariably, a few years later, they'd say, "Listen, man, why don't you just do it yourself?" So this went on for a couple of years, and then very lucky, my girlfriend, our wife, was also encouraging me. I have a sister who runs a business, also encouraged me. So I just said, right, fuck it, I'm just going to do it. So it's obviously a big
yeah.
enough move at the
Can I ask
time.
you a question, Paul? CPL obviously sold. It's 2 years ago now. They
But
sold.
that, yeah.
If you had have hung in there at the level and trajectory you were going with your career, would you have made a big bag of money on that event, or was that only for the top of the top? Do you ever think about that?
I have a bit of an idea about what some of them got, to be honest with you now.
Yeah,
It may be BS. I've actually never had the conversation with anyone. It wouldn't cross my mind
yeah,
to be honest with you. Like you know yourself when you run a business, like it's irreplaceable in relation to the enjoyment that goes with it. And if it had been a 6 month swing or something like that, you might go, okay, well, fuck it, like that time wasn't great.
yeah.
But yeah, it didn't cross my mind.
Yeah, I always wonder, because there are people who will stick in there for those events, and
Hmm.
then they'll figure out who where when they get to that level, they're like, well, who's on the next journey to have an event in three
Yeah.
years, and can I get on that? But that wasn't in your head, even as a director, you were thinking, actually, this is go. I'm going to just do my thing.
Yeah, and look, I was lucky enough, you're on six figures. The biggest challenge was like I'd hired like there was 25, 30 people and I'd been to like weddings, christenings, funerals and all the rest. It's tricky to be honest with you because you're walking away from that and you feel like I just hired this woman who'd come from a competitor and I felt like I'd sort of committed to her and she was like come again, whenever I moved, I was gone within 24 hours. But yeah, look, man, you have to make these decisions, and it was one of these things that kept delaying and procrastinating and I just bit the bullet then at a period of time.
So your experience to date is massive companies. So Reed, like massive CPL.
Yeah.
CPL is to Ireland what Reed is to England in many ways. What
Yeah.
when you set up your own company, what were the things that you were going to do differently? Because having a boutique that's owner led is so different to working
Hmm.
within a machine. And what have been maybe some of those lessons that you've learned over the years?
I'll give you the short version of this. So when I first set up, the nature of our business built is, within professional services that like if like what is the difference in KPMG, EY, PwC, etc. Like it's generally going to be down to the people and the individuals and the trust and the relationships they build up. The initial tagline was asking the right questions and really focusing in. So I felt at the time, and look, CPL is a very successful company, but it was full on PSL, 15% type stuff. You're one of lots of different companies working on it. It just wasn't for me. So I just said, right, I'm going to just really focus in on exclusive retained work to begin with as much as possible and within that sort of CFO finance director space, and then really focusing in on not promising volume at all but just low much more on the quality side of things, but probably the same as every other recruitment company says. If I fast forward on now, look, we really focus in on that employer value proposition. So we've a 3 year strategy to get to 75% exclusive retained. We're probably about 50% at the moment, which is quite a healthy space. And we've grown, I would say, fairly strongly from that point of view. Would be strong, I think, in the marketing content space, basically. So we would, a lot of the business development activity we have would be on the back of content and interaction that we have basically, and that it gives you sort of an opportunity to ring people and so forth. Same on the candidate side, like as you know, the cost of sourcing like LinkedIn, we ditched Irish Jobs last year, which is they're owned by Stepstone now. Similar situation will happen in the UK. They obviously increased their prices. Deal with Indeed, fun tricky enough to be honest with you. So I think the next big thing is having a really, really strong talent pool structure,
Mhm.
basically. But you have to be really valuable in that space, I think, to build it out.
I'll step you back just into that content piece. Some of the things I've learned. And I'm not sure if you share the same viewer experience. It's more like you can get short-term wins from content if you integrate it into your process. So if you have a salary survey, for example, the
Yeah,
wins aren't from the actual booklet. It's from the connection points of asking people about the booklet, then talking about it, sharing the results, and getting them involved in their insights, them
yeah,
being the clients and high valued candidates, and making it around them. Same as a podcast, same as anything, making your customer base the celebrity. I
yeah.
find that, but outside of that, content and all of that and brand building, it's not a quick win. It takes it takes a
Yeah. So,
long time.
yeah, I'll chat you through. And these are more like just, individual sort of examples. So there's a book I read years ago called, I think it's called Recruit Rock Stars, fairly cheesy. It's a guy called Jeff Hyman. It's designed both for recruiters as well as TA, so both agency and TA. He was big on the employer value proposition piece, and I know everyone sort of talks about it the whole time, but he has this process where you'd ask a company 15 questions about their business, and there's usually two or three things that they're excellent at, and the rest of them, might be sort of a work on. So when we were pitching for retained exclusive, we sort of went in and said, well, look, we're going to just kick off doing this first of all, just as a conversation started, basically. And there's several companies now who they just buy that service from us, basically, even if they're not recruiting. So we've managed to set up an additional service from that point of view. There's two or three other areas then around psychometric assessment. So that CPL mindset of looking at your customer and their spend, basically. So we want to just continues to have the biggest share of wallet in their recruitment spend. If we're competing against them from time to time, then so be, and that's quite common within the insurance space. But because I work with CFOs, basically, I try and get a better understanding of what their overall spend is with anything recruitment focused, and then try and understand basically what service we can provide from that point of view. The
Can I,
trickiest part to manage, to be honest
can I
with you,
ask,
is
can I just jump in and ask a question on that?
go for it, yeah.
Um, that's a lot easier for somebody like CPL that can say to the CFO or to the recruitment, the internal recruiter, we want your recruitment spend and we can do everything. To date, you've been very hyper focused on the finance side.
Hmm.
How do you like can you ring fence that, or is your overall vision to get out into the other areas and retain the work of 10 firms as opposed to bit part work in 50?
Yeah, well, good question. The biggest challenge is actually the rewarding piece, because perm recruitment is very lucrative, and a deal, a 20K deal is going to be worth a lot more than, the service you provide. So employer value proposition might be 5, 6, 7K. And I'm not saying more work goes into it, it's obviously more consistent, but it's just a totally different sort of pricing model. So I wouldn't say reluctant. We had to move into tech about 2 or 3 years ago. I find myself in meetings with, it could be like an AIB or it could be like a fintech. And they'd be like, okay, well, there's four roles we're hiring for. And, three of them are tech. And I was just thinking to myself, look, man, unless we change basically quickly enough. We also had a long running association with Archer Recruitment. I get on very well with Sam and Josh, be very well run tech recruitment business.
Yeah, very
And
good.
there would have been a lot of cross sell based between the two of us. So I just had to make the decision, though. I don't think it would have a banking function, in a few years' time if we didn't. And that's been a challenge. I foolishly assumed that all of our lovely blue chip clients who we recruit accountants for, as soon as we said we're doing tech, they give us their tech jobs, which lo and behold wasn't the case. It also coincided with 2023 was obviously a tougher year on the tech side. There was lots of sort
Pretty
of
tough.
redundancies. Yeah. Having said all that, like, man, and you obviously run a business yourself, like, because we got off the ground with two or three people in that space now, it was an absolute graft. I had to quickly learn basically about the different areas within the tech side of things, and really like beg, borrow, steal to get out and about and win business base within the area. So that's been a slow piece. Yeah, I think around the share of wallet piece from a recruitment point of view, it is hard, but I think the market is for specialists. I don't think that's changed at all. I think people
Mm.
come to us, they're looking for, job title specific areas. Can we go and pitch for a big pharma company, big multinational for their spend? Probably not. But I think the market in Ireland's grown fairly significantly. Like when you and I were growing up, like it was, there wasn't many businesses around. A lot of them were family
Mm.
businesses. There wasn't many sort of high net worth, and I'm not saying it sort of changed that much, but there's significant consolidation now. I mean, I play CFOs with lots of firms who've been acquired by PE, and so we replaced the CFO basically, who with the companies acquiring lots of other businesses. And a lot of these companies like talent's number one on the list. That's the currency when it comes to if you can deliver what they're looking for, then the market's as strong as it's ever been.
With regards to looking at the market and thinking the results that came in last night, that Mr. Trump, President Trump, has won the 2024 election, um, and I was by a bigger by a bigger landslide than was expected. How do you think that's going to affect the Irish economy?
So I'll give you a tip. If there's ever an outcome and one you want and one you don't want, bet on the one that you don't want. And then, to a degree, there's some kind of a consolation. So I put 100 quid in Paddy Power on Trump about 2 or 3 days ago. And
Yeah.
I think it got, evens back now. So it wasn't too bad. I'm a Man U fan. So if Liverpool are playing the final, which is obviously frequently enough, I always put 100 quid on them. Basically, it's a
Yeah.
little bit of a consolation then, if and when they win. Although, having said
There's
that,
not much consolation for being a Man U fan this weather.
yeah,
I
that
am
is
too.
true. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a long winter.
Yeah, so I'll go back to the question. Yeah, I don't know, and you've obviously traded in Ireland a bit. Like it's a funny old setup in that you've a significant number of American multinationals in Ireland, right? It's huge, and we're lucky from that point of view. It employs lots of people, and lots of the Irish companies then would service that. But it's not for everyone, and a lot of the decisions are based in the States. So like the top tier CFOs, and there would be some very good VPs of finance within the multinationals, but it's really working for sort of Irish HQ businesses. So that's been the market we've gone after. It's hard to beat, you and I spoke about reoccurring revenue. It's very hard to beat that consistency that you get from like a multinational from that point of view. But a lot of the time they have, their own TA. Look, so personally, when it comes to big decisions, I set up Engage People in 2016. Brexit, you can only imagine the time was going to be seen as being like, the end of half of the Irish economy. And then, Trump got in, obviously, then. Look, life goes on. I think,
Life
look,
didn't just go on though.
yeah, yeah, well,
Both those
yeah,
things were net positive for
yeah,
the Irish economy. Like
yeah.
it's never had a recruitment boom like it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's been, almost an upward trajectory in most areas. I'd say give or take tech since then. So some people would say the finance space has been slightly harder, but we're up about 25% year on year. Now, I've worked exceptionally hard to achieve that. So it's not, there's bigger business than us who, probably couldn't say that, but it's just
Yeah.
the nature of this where we're at.
I think most people went up 70% in 2002 and then dropped about 40 in
In 22, yeah. Yeah,
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 in the
yeah,
following year. So
yeah,
and now we're starting to see a bottoming
yeah,
out.
yeah. Yeah, I never found it like because I back and forth to the UK quite a bit. I know the UK economy sort of went through a much, Ireland's never been really in a recession, it hasn't been a recession for a number of years. The interest rates change did impact lots of business or lots of companies, the property side of things. But it just in relation to, look, you could be right. And maybe to agree, or you couldn't say the last 4 years have been positive from an American perspective. Now, obviously, they've had the pandemic and then there've been global inflation, all sorts of stuff going on. Time will tell. All of the American stock prices are up at the moment. I've ditched crypto a while back. Now we've actually a few clients who are in the crypto space, basically. So I've always kept a bit of a nose. They're through the roof now at the moment. So time will tell. But look, just focus on things that are in your control. It's if people want to chat about it, like so be it. So you just have to get on
The
with it.
the polarity between the UK ecosystem and the Irish since Brexit is insane. So
Hmm.
I ran a poll in our leaders group yesterday, or not yesterday, a couple of weeks ago, and like, are you optimistic? Like, is the market in? 90% of them said they're like they're destroyed, and
Right.
that was like I was really shocked to see that, uh,
Hmm.
because those in America, those in Australia, those in Ireland, especially Ireland, were a lot more optimistic. But in the UK, there's that, and then I dug a little bit deeper, did a few calls, and the amount of insolvencies for UK recruitment firms was absolutely shocking. So, it feels like there's just not enough liquidity in the UK recruitment market right now.
Mm.
Hopefully, and then the budget, and the Labour government, and all of that's coming. It's not increased optimism. So I'll be curious. Today I ran a poll, and 95% of them, 99% of them, were optimistic on last night's
Mm.
results.
Right.
So
Okay.
so just
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see where we go. And I always like, because we do a little bit of business in a lot of different markets, it's always interesting to see whose thoughts are with which market, and
Yeah.
how that affects it.
Yeah.
Um, just in terms of building your personal brand, I've noticed you've done a bit of international media. You've tried to launch the podcast. Um, how does somebody go about getting getting on national radio and TV and the likes?
Yeah.
Does it help that you're in a small country, that you've like you're a Dubliner in that space, like that you've been in the space for a long time, or like it, I take it it's not just like some you throwing a cold email into RTE and saying, hey,
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, geez, I wish it was. So,
yeah,
look, and look, you know yourself. There's never one piece.
yeah,
I think so. We've the last sort of market salary overview piece that we focused very much in on we within our talent pools, right? So say we've like 500 accountants basically who would all be in demand, right? And we're like just honest about that. We don't The communication we have is it's not with everyone. It's not on LinkedIn because people are going to BS about the feedback that they get back. So we obviously stayed, look, we're only speaking with people who are in demand and asking about their sort of interests. And then the salary information, we just picked out 50 jobs in each area. Basically, I got a grad in to do some BI work, basically, and the content we produced was accurate, from that point of view. So there's a PR woman who I knew from years ago. Basically, she just advised me to get to know some of these contacts, and there's some of them might be in the Irish Times, might be etc. So from time to time, put a press release together through our marketing department, and sometimes people pick it up. You have to warm them up a little bit in relation to, look, we've information coming through. Would this be of interest? The first thing I did when I set up Engage People was I went to the Sunday Business Post and I said, look, if I speak to 100 CFOs about, I think at the time it was around, it was to with graduates basically, and getting them up to being profitable within the workforce, etc. So that to me was like a brilliant tactic because it just like could ring 100 CFOs then, and obviously took off from that point of view. So I just learned that you have to be sort of entrepreneurial, pick out surveys, pick at the right space, the right time. We did work with one or two PR people, let's say 3 or 4 years back, maybe 2 years back. It wasn't huge expensive, I'd say 2 or 3 grand, and she really, really delivered. Basically, again, it was at a time where there was a lot people were just coming back to work, and there was lots of surveys and stuff being done around that sort of things. But I would say we dip in and dip out. I don't like, so our podcast, when we've done two major runs where we've done a video session, and I've always just targeted good people, sort of senior decision makers. And then same in the podcast side of things. I think we may revisit it for next year. It might be Keith who works with me from that side of things. But yeah, so when we do it, we just go really, really hard, and you make it like you have to be relentless. You're contacting enough people that some of it's going to stick, and then they may or may not come back to you. If I have their phone number, I'll call them and say, look, what angle are you looking for? And by and large, then you get a bit of a response. It helps obviously when you've been around the block if they know your name in that period of time. The negative thing I'd say about Engage People is it's very ageist, and I would say every day references made to so I'm 46. I'd say some of my team are 23, and it's there's hilarious laughter every day when I talk about the 80s and the 90s. So I don't know if you experienced that in your place.
no, I think I have a lot of business partners instead of staff across the different things they do.
Yeah,
Um, and most of the people have been with us a long time now, and luckily the ages are pretty similar.
yeah.
Um, but if I had a traditional recruitment company, I'd definitely hire young and hungry, because
Can you still get them?
can you still get them? Here's a question, right? Yes, you can. Um, it's definitely harder. But look, there's working class people everywhere that need a
Mm,
break. There's competitive people that need to channel it. There's people with a chip on their shoulder that need to prove themselves. Um, as society gets richer and everybody grows up wanting to be an influencer instead of doing work, it is definitely harder. But I think we're probably in line for a bit of a correction. on that, and we'll probably see a tough generation of kids coming through, unlike the last 5, 6, 7 years. Um, I've uh, I've noticed we jumped into a little bit of grad recruitment, and just before probably about a year ago, one of the things I noticed was the lack of courtesy of not
Mm.
turning up, or if they couldn't make it this or not responding. And I was like, that would never have happened when we were graduating.
Yeah.
It would have been drilled into us to from our parents, from everything, that like you have to do what you say you're going to do. You have to
Yeah.
respond. You have to be courteous. So I noticed that was a big shock. But I think I'm always a great believer that people will do whatever is in their best interest, and if they
Yeah.
have to, they will.
Yeah.
So
There was
uh,
that song that from the Who, people talk about my generation. I think it was the 70s or 80s. I think
yeah,
every generation thinks the next one is like, lazier,
yeah,
more entitled, or whatever else. And like if you look at, and I don't know if you're a fan of Greg Savage. I do like him, I have to say, because he doesn't bang on about that as much, and he's obviously, I like him because he's much older than me, but
yeah,
he would talk a lot about, look, man, if you're going to be hiring people in in their 20s, then it's up to us to, to get
yeah,
to know, rather than sitting around going like, for fuck's sake, what's
yeah,
the story with Maureen wants to leave at 4:30 every day, and doesn't see any, doesn't expect any consequence to that. Look, I think that you have to work very hard to get the right people in. Like we've run. Is recruitment the right space for like fresh graduates? I'd never be like totally black and white on it, but like we all go through different cycles to say, look, can you get good grads in? Can you get good
so
grad program? But
yes, if you can guarantee that you're going to be profitable within a 2 year window. So, but if you think that it's going to take 5 years to make real money out of them and they'll stay forever, I think
yeah,
your attrition rate
great, yeah,
going to
that's a fair
be
point.
for a boutique.
Yeah,
If you have 30 of them and only X and need to survive, and you know your numbers
yeah,
and you can horse it out, maybe,
yeah,
but if you're having a boutique, I think it's definitely better if somebody needs it and can appreciate it.
yeah,
Like they, I think when I went to Australia, we all needed the visa, right? And we got used to the lifestyle of the money we were making.
mm,
And then you make so much money that you're like, well, what else could I do that'll make this amount of money and give me this lifestyle? And
yeah,
before you know it, you're 8 years in or 6 years in, and it's too late to go to something else. So that definitely works from a traveling perspective. But in Dublin, a pet peeve of mine doing rec to rec was always that um, you would speak to people who would do it, but just so that they could get the internal gig in Facebook
yeah,
or
yeah,
Amazon.
yeah,
And it was like a
painful.
stepping
Yeah,
stone, 18 months.
yeah,
There's a lot of like that costs a lot of money, and you need to
yeah,
be
yeah,
the
yeah.
size of CPL to house that.
Yeah, and look, to be honest with you, when I was in CPL, you had a great option because they had lots of RPO type structures that if someone wasn't, and it was up to them, I don't want to, put cast
Yeah.
everyone in the same tower, or tar in the same brush, but you could just put, they could go on in-house basically if they weren't working out. Did you ever any regrets, or did you ever think about anything else but recruitment since you started working in the sector?
Always, like
Really, yeah.
really. But I suppose one thing about working for yourself is if I wanted to be a coach or an advisor,
Hmm.
do that. I coached 100 people. So, and then I got to design a whole structure and education program and bring in other speakers. And then if I
Yeah,
wanted
fair
to
play.
be like an event organizer, I do that. Or if I wanted to be a community or a podcaster. So I get the green-eyed monster over peers and friends and all of that whenever things aren't
Yeah,
going well. But mostly it's given me the opportunity to travel the world, live in the sunshine, raise my kids, have a bit of time to spend with them, and from time to time we make good money. Sometimes we don't, like the last year. But I think all in all, you can do what you want in it. And
yeah.
I kind of got to know what I wasn't good at. Like
Hmm.
I'm not really good at administration or math or coordination or like so really if you're a sales and marketing guy that kind of likes to influence, likes to make deals, and you figure out that there's not a better career
Yeah. Yeah. And
unless unless you're
you were,
getting further up on the banking
yeah.
side or something, right?
Yeah, you were quick enough onto the virtual PA, that type of thing now. I remember in the early days now, it was
Yeah,
like there was some of it was in, that 4 hour work week and stuff now. But I think, having that mindset of giving stuff a go, I think was always good. And like you say, because you've got different revenue streams, like you got sort of broadly maybe in the recruitment sector. But yeah, it's a funny one when people sort of passing through, and you do have to get it the same with lots of things. It's not for everyone. I just never had any regrets, I
yeah.
never even thought about it. Like 08, 09 in the financial recruitment space, I don't know what you were doing, man, but it was like Dublin was like a real shit show.
I was
There was
I was
nothing
working
doing.
I was working in a nightclub in Brussels,
Right,
and
okay.
yeah, and
Was trade down at all? Or people still went to nightclubs during the crash?
it was all right. It was fine. I mean, 'cause it was in then it was fine, but
Yeah,
I just needed to escape, and then I got into recruitment the following
mm,
year. Kind of finished a master's degree,
yeah,
and that I was doing part time for felt like for about 20 years,
yeah,
and then just got to Australia, and then boom, like they don't have recessions there.
yeah,
So no, I'm really happy that I got into it, and it's one of these things when it's going well, it's the greatest thing in the world. When it's not, you need to be thinking, what can I do to stay afloat and what new thing can I create so I don't fall
yeah,
in this position next time?
yeah,
So one of the great sayings that my business partner Andy Hallett said to me, it's a famous saying, but it's never waste a good recession.
mm,
And when the pandemic came, we lost 100 grand off our business in the first day. And for a small family business, I was like, oh my God, this is terrible.
mm,
And straight away I set up Recwire because loads of other people were going through the same thing.
yeah,
And then you look at what can I do from this? And then it was like, oh, a lot of these independent recruiters don't know what they're doing. Maybe I can
mm,
coach them and teach them about remote work or marketing or any of the other stuff that I've learned or been professionally trained or any of that.
yeah,
So and then that led to something else. So and then
yeah,
this time when this crash came, like Rec to Rec was so easy. It was great. It was brilliant. Like it was good times. It was like just moved to Gibraltar, and then oh no, this is tough. So what do? We built RecWired Plus, the L&D platform,
yeah,
and then it's the slog of, okay, maybe I'll run out of money. Maybe I won't get this up. Do I need
mm,
to go get money? No, no. Try and build, always try and build to get your own money in. And then when the good times come, you're ready to catch that wave with your surfboard and enjoy it until the next crash. And then the cycle continues.
yeah,
And
yeah. Yeah, but fair play. I think it's good that you've always been honest about that because it's a lot of recruitment business owners there's a fair bit of BS that a lot of companies won't mention about challenging periods and so forth. And it's an expensive business, if you're hiring lots of permanent people, it's expensive, and they not maybe dissimilar in a way to the hospitality sector which you mentioned. A quiet restaurant's expensive to run. Similar to the recruitment business, you could have really good people and people go through bad form and you have to be able to weather it.
so, Paul, predictions on the Irish economy next 2 to 5 years for the recruitment sector. Um, is tech going to come back? Is will recruitment companies grow? Will the people who've survived do well? What do you see in the landscape?
I think the tech sector is coming back. I wouldn't underestimate there's a huge number of tech recruitment businesses in Ireland now. It's I'd say like if for every there's lots of healthcare recruitment business, etc., but it's far, far larger than any other space, in the sort of the corporate side of things. So a lot of them have shed it back to one or two people. So it's highly, highly, I don't say commoditized basic, but there's lots of companies doing the same thing from that point of view. I suspect it'll grow by 10, 15%. That seems to be the direction that companies are moving in from that point of view. A lot of them massively overhired, as you know, in 21 and early 22 from that side of things. Within the other areas, like I just think it's really is a sort of a quality play. I just don't think all these jobs like accounts payable, accounts receivable. First of all, a lot of them are automated, and a lot of them are gone east. So just most of the business now is so when 5, 10 years ago, the average salary was much lower now because of, inflation has come up, but also there's much higher value positions that are based in Ireland now because it's an expensive place to live. Dublin is a real challenge infrastructure wise. So there used to be job announcements left, right, centre. There isn't anymore because there isn't anywhere to live now. Dublin's not alone from that point of view. But if you look at London, for example, like there's a very, very good integrated public transport network. I know people grumble about it, but you can live a bit further out and have a reliable way to get to work every day. So that they would be the negatives. Look, I would be optimistic. I think Ireland is very well run. I know that there is there's a right wing aspect within the upcoming election, and there are challenges and stuff there. But I do think that it's very much a pro-business type environment, and I think that the people who are involved in running businesses are naturally sort of growth focused, from that point of view. So I would be optimistic. Now, who knows from a global perspective? Whenever the original the energy crisis, whenever Russia invaded Ukraine, there was probably a month or so of, maybe stuff was put on pause for a period of time, but it hasn't happened since. So look, I would be optimistic, but I'd go back to what I said, Jill. I'm very lucky with a small business in that you can move very quickly, to where it's busy and what's in your control if one area isn't busy.
So you're at 15 now, um, and it's a wonderful number, 15. It's you're on the cusp of not being an owner-operator business
Mm.
and moving into that next area where you're working on your business a bit more. A couple of questions. One, do you see your role then as going out, meeting CFOs and pulling in roles for everybody else and just making sure that your management team is all on par and you're doing the strategy stuff, or do you still think you're like going to house your own desk? Um, do like how do you plan to get from 15 to 30?
Yeah,
And
good
what does
question.
that look like? Because
Yeah,
it's
of
I've seen so many people
course. Yeah, yeah,
get from 9 to 15 back to
yeah,
9,
yeah,
and it's that floating bit.
yeah,
And yeah, I know there's a few owners in Dublin, they go to 50, 60, and then they go back to 9,
yeah,
and they
yeah,
ramp up every time and then they go back. So like
yeah.
you've consistently grown a little bit every year.
Mm.
Uh, is Can you give us an insight into what the next, I don't know, 5 years looks like for engaged people?
Yeah, so we've the 3-year vision nailed in terms of what we're looking to do. It's all broken into projects. There's a colleague of mine, Keith, he's an MD in Deutsche Bank, we hired 3 or 4 years ago. Exceptional recruiter now. He's been very successful. His background is in project management, so he actually runs a lot of the different pieces and programs and stuff. So to a degree, I fit into whatever whatever's going on in the business. From that point of view, I'm not obsessed about people numbers, to be honest with you. And maybe I'm somewhat unique in that I managed like a very big team beforehand, and I sat in a big management team, and I always wanted to really enjoy coming into work every day, and I am at the moment. If there was another, if we had 5 people who were underperforming, basically my job totally changes from that point of view. So it just wants to be really, really intentional about one step at a time growth, which I think broadly speaking we've managed to achieve it with, certainly not getting it perfect every time, but I think our attraction, development, retention, but most of our management team with us 5+ years, basically, so there's consistency there. I'd say we all get on very well again, which is good. It's a profitable business, right? So there's a lot of positive pieces from that point of view. A very good question, Upon. I actually love recruiting, and it is a bit of a challenge, and I love the CFO side of things, So at some point, and I'm this is ridiculous, right? But I'm sometimes like someone might bill, I'd be in the say the top three fee earners. And I'm so ridiculously sometimes thinking, oh fuck, I'm gonna have to, do another couple of deals now because I want to be ahead of them. Where clearly, it's in my interest. I own the business from that point of view, so I do need to grow up from that point of view. I think, look,
Mm.
man, I'm good in the BD space, and I think it'd be foolish if I didn't stick at that side of things. I have a good network from that side. It doesn't, the way some things you might do, it doesn't really feel like work, when I'm out and about. So Ireland are playing the All Blacks on Friday. I'm bringing 3 CFOs. I'm actually as happy going with them as I would be with my mates. Maybe, I'm probably not going to be like lashing back points as quickly. You might say that, but
Yeah,
that part of it comes easy
four
to
instead
me.
of eight.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's actually that they have this new thing. It's actually harder to get points during the game, which is no harm.
Yeah.
So I think if we follow the structures around the 3-year vision, we're bringing someone in on the L&D side, or we're speaking with people at the moment. I think that is going to be a major piece to step up from our side, and maybe a little bit more accountability around the coaching side of things. And then just not, if we agree to hit certain objectives, I've been too soft from time to time, and that's slowed us down. So I think that for us now for the next year or two to achieve. So for us to get another 25% next year, we're in a different space now of doing like, we're looking to like 250,000 every month now, which is, it's your and we're primarily a perm business basically. So you really have to have your shit together to achieve that.
Awesome. All right, Paul, that's us today. Thank you so much for coming on. Good to catch up. And before we go, any last words of advice to anybody who is thinking of setting up a recruitment business?
I just said, man, just go for it. And I'd look back or listen back to some of Dulta's podcasts from over the years. It's certainly been very helpful for me. So thanks very much, Dulta, for what you do for the recruitment community.
Thank you, Paul. All right, take care.